Nicola Sturgeon, obviously the CalMac Ferry contracts were handed out in Port Glasgow a wee while back, and Nicola Sturgeon has been under pressure over this. The Finance Secretary, Kate Forbes, was unable last week to tell us who was actually responsible for those contracts. Nicola Sturgeon came out last Thursday in the Scottish Parliament and said that tried to put the blame on Derek Mackay, the disgraced MSP Derek Mackay, but said that the buck stops with her, and she said that she will fully answer questions today in the Parliament. So this should be very, very interesting indeed, because this has gone way, way over budget. There's been various claims from various people about, the contracts being handed out for political purposes. We heard from Jim McCall, who got one of the contracts, and he felt that they had been handed out for political purposes rather than perhaps for the correct meaning or the correct purpose. So very interesting to see what Nicola Sturgeon's got to say for herself today. She certainly will be grilled, there's no doubt about that, by her opposition parties, and as we try to get to the bottom of who was actually responsible for these contracts.
Grant Shapps, the Secretary of State for Transport, I'm reading a very sharp letter he's fired off to Hebblethwaite.
Yeah, we've heard that. Yeah, that's right. Grant Shapps already came out and said that, urging him to reinstate these P&O workers. We've had protests right across Scotland and further afield down in England as well. So an absolute outrage. You can imagine waking up one day, you've had a job the day before, next day you're out of work. So yeah, absolutely outrageous. Peter Hebblethwaite is going before a committee at the Scottish Parliament today remotely. So whether that's going to change anything, I'm not entirely sure, but certainly a lot of pressure being put on by various people. You talked earlier, Eamon, about the ships there, of course, being stopped and because of safety reasons. So there's certainly a lot of pressure on P&O at the moment. Whether they're going to buckle under that, well, remains to be seen.
Here's the thing, Davy, that I question. Awful what happened. The Secretary of State, he's saying, give these folk their jobs back on their previous terms, conditions and wages. But there must be a big temptation from the workers, 800 of them, not to want their jobs back, because if they're going to get payoffs of lump sums, I don't know if we're talking 10,000, 20,000, 40,000, but that might be more attractive to get out of a low-paid job, take the money in the bank and go and work somewhere else.
Well, I think you've got a very valid point, Eamon. I think that's highly likely what a lot of people will decide to do if they get that opportunity. It's not the best paid job in the world, and I'm sure that most of the workers would freely admit that, and we can see that for ourselves. But yeah, I mean, it does you do wonder whether they actually want the jobs back or whether they want just to take some sort of payment and move on and find other employment. Either way, they certainly deserve to be compensated. It certainly doesn't seem to be correct to just lose your job overnight when, as I say, one day you're in a job, and given the climate we find ourselves in, cost of living rises, fuel rises, it must be a very, very worrying time for them.